Good morning. Today we're going to be looking at redux, and we're going to be looking at using redux to solve a simple problem of creating a counter application in React. Um, Formally, for you to use redux, you have to do it the right way, the normal way that it was done before. And in that case, we considered terms like store, actions, dispatch, reducers, and types. That used to be the way into Redux. You have to create the global store that has all the states. So let's say you're creating a counter app. You have to have inside your store the count, which is going to be the state that will be changing. If you have a counter app and you're pressing the plus button, you're going to find out that the count will be increasing 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're pressing the minus button, it's going to be decreasing. So that count that changes is a state because it is changing, you understand? So any state that changes what you capture in your store. So your store is like the global store. The store in Redux is the global store that has all the states that can change. If the state that's if it cannot change, then there might not be any need to put it in the store. So let's say you have login, log out, you understand? So somebody can be logged in or logged out. So the is logged in should be a state in the store because is login could be true or false. So any state that can change, you put them in the store. Now, what is action? So action is what you do in order to when you want to do something, like say you click a button in order to effect a state change. So that clicking of a button, that's an action you want to put. It's an action type of, say increment. You want to increment something. So you click, that is action. So this very action in Redux terms, they have what they call dispatch that dispatches this action, telling the store that you want to change it. So once you dispatch this action, what happens is that the reducer, which are functions that actually do the changing, then they will not change. If it was one, now they will add another one to make it two. So in the reducer is where you have the function that will do plus or minus. So we're going to try this out and see how it works. But now we're going to be trying it out using what we'll call the Redux toolkit that makes it pretty much easier for you to use. Okay, I needed to say all this before we can start writing the codes. So when you're using Redux toolkit, you're going to be seeing terms like configure store, create reducer, create action, create slice, create async tongue. We're going to be going through all these. Okay, so but I'm going to quickly start this out so that you learn how to do this. So make sure you have Node.js installed on your system so you can see my editor here, and this is where you'll be seeing what I'm doing. So I'm quickly going to start by clicking here. So this is my VS Code. So I'll click here and go to open folder because I want to create a new folder where I'll be doing this working. There are different ways you can do this. Okay, so this is the React tutorial that we did the last time, but I would simply want to go to documents. I'm going to come over to this side and create new folder. I'm going to call this folder Redux. I'm going to click on create. Okay, so now I have this Redux folder here. I'm going to click open so that the folder will open up so that we can start doing this. Okay, so you see the folder here, Redux. This is where I'm going to be having a tutorial that are related to Redux. So I'm going to quickly close up this getting started, and I'm going to press on Control backtick to bring up the terminal. Another way to bring up the terminal is see this Control backtick. You can also go to View and go to Terminal. This is another way of bringing it. So you can see the terminal is up here. So I'm going to start up to write. Okay. So in order to do this, I'm going to simply say npx create react app. Okay, that's the instruction to do that. So what should I call this app? What should I call this app? So I'm going to call it a counter app. That's the name of the app. So I'm going to press enter. Now allow npx to quickly scaffold this project for me. So once it's done, you're going to see it here. Okay, so that's how we're going to move. It's gonna be from scratch, and we are gonna try to understand this. Okay. So let me wait for it to finish up. Okay, so I'm gonna wait for that. Don't mind my system. Sometimes it takes pretty while to get stuff down. Okay. Okay, so you can see it's done. So you can see the counter up here. I'm gonna quickly open it up. So sorry. Okay, so you can see the SRC folder and the rest of the things. So because we are gonna be doing Redux, I'm quickly gonna install Redux so that we can use it. So for you to install Redux, you simply say npm stop. So I'm gonna say npm install, and I'm gonna be installing because we are using Redux toolkit. So I'm gonna say redux.js slash toolkit. That's how you do it. Toolkit. Then I'm also going to install React Redux because React Redux is going to connect Redux to React because Redux can actually do more, not just with React, but with other frameworks like Vue and Angular. So Redux React is going to connect the Redux to React because it's a state management system that can be used by other libraries. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. So I'm going to click OK and let this install. So I'm gonna, while it's installing, I'm gonna quickly explain uh, what we are gonna be doing. So first of all, we're gonna configure the store. That's the first thing we'll do. We're gonna try to configure store. So I'm gonna come to, I'm gonna create a folder known as app in my SRC. I'll just click on this SRC. I'm gonna create new folder and I'm gonna call it app. Press the enter key so you can see app. This is the normal way that Redux people want you to do this. So please do this way. So I'm gonna create store.js. So inside my app, I'm gonna click here and create my store.js. Okay, so that is where we are starting from. So in the store, that is where you put that is going to be your global state manager that is going to have every possible state that you can change. So this store is going to be connected to your reducers because your reducers are going to take the state from the step. Each respective reducer, say counter reducer, login reducer, you understand? They're going to now push the state to this very store. So what do you do inside the store? You use create store. If you are using the old Redux, you would have used create store, but here we're going to use configure store. So here we're going to import something. So you're going to import something, and that thing you're going to be importing it from what you just installed now, and that is our what? Our Redux. So I'm going to say add Redux. This is what we just simply see. It's already showing us. So I'm going to Redux.js toolkit. That's what we just installed. Okay. So I'm gonna come down. That is what I just did. So I'm gonna create this very store function. But as I'm creating it, I'm gonna be exporting it at the same time. So I'm gonna say export const. So what you see, it's already written it for me, but it's writing create store. I thought I want to use the old way, but I want to use configure store because I'm using Redux toolkit. So I'm gonna say store and it's equal to. So what is the function I wanna do? Configure store. Okay, so once I do configure store, it's inside this very configure store that I'm gonna put all my reducers. You see, it's already written that for me. So I'm gonna put all my reducers inside this configure store. Okay, so the reducers I'm gonna be putting here includes both the reducer for the uh, for the counter or for the what's it called, login. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna be having. So I'm gonna make sure that this is okay. I have 1 2 here, 1 2 here. So I'm gonna make sure that I close this. Okay, see the error has gone out, so I'm gonna save. Okay, so this is the first thing you do. You create your global store. So global store, you're gonna from the reducer now. Any reducer that you create, you're gonna capture it here. So this will contain all the reducers like the counter reducer, the login reducer, and other reducers. But I'm gonna have just one reducer because I just want to create a counter app. Now, how do you get this store to the app? How do you get this store to the app? So you're simply gonna go to your index.js. You should be able to bring the store into the app here. So that's what we're going to try to do, to bring the store into the app here. So how do I do that? So first of all, I'm going to import that store. So let me try to import the store. So I exported it. So I'm going to just simply import it like this. So store. So where am I importing it from? Store. See? So I'm having Google Copilot, so it's even helping me like write out some codes there. Okay, but you see, this my store is not actually from just store. So even if you're using Copilot, you're gonna know how to put it. Store is inside the apps. So if I go here, then I'm also gonna import provider. Very very important from React Redux. But before I go on, let me quickly tell this that this is actually from app. Because you can see here that my store is from my app.js. This is where my store is. It's inside app folder. Okay. So that is how you do that. So once you've done that, you're gonna use that provider to provide the store. Okay. So instead of having this React strict mode and blah blah blah, I'm gonna simply change this to just take it out completely. And then I'll just use my provider to provide my store. It's so easy. So the provider is going to be taking a prop of store because that's what is going to be provided. So I'm going to close it out with provider. Okay. So that is how you get your store, your app to know that you have a provider, that you have a store. So you're using provider to provide a store. Okay. So that is the only thing that you have to do in your index.html. Very, very important. Okay. Yeah. So now is the time to start creating the slices. So the slices are the different reducers for different things. Different reducers for different things. They are created and called the slices. So in order for you to do that, you're going to come to these very SRC folder. Very, very important. That's where you do it. You create another folder inside the SRC, inside the source folder, and you're going to call these features. So that is how they do it. Do it the way they do it, and you'll be happy you did. So features now are the different features, the different components that use state that you want to create reducers for. That is what you put in features. Okay. So inside these features now, I'm going to create another folder for the specific feature, counter feature. Maybe tomorrow I want to do login, profile, and some other things. Okay. So features folder is going to have my counter folder, because inside my counter folder, I'm going to have the counter slice and any other thing that I want. So now, inside my counter folder, I'm going to now create a file, and that file is known as the counter slice. Okay, make sure you put .js. So this is where I will now create the reducer, which is the counter slice. We'll call it slice because it doesn't have just the reducer in the old, like as in the older redux. It has both the reducer, the actions, everything put together. That's why we'll call it slice. Okay. So let me create this very slice. So first of all, I'm gonna import create slice because that's what I'm gonna be using for this. So I'm gonna say import this is a named export, so I'm gonna use curly bracket. So import create slice. Okay, and I'm gonna be importing it from Redux toolkit. Okay, that's written there for me. That's interesting. Interesting. So now for your slice, you're gonna be using the initial state of the count. You're gonna be passing it into the your slice. So it's always good you create a variable that represents that, or create an object for that. So I'm gonna simply say const initial state. Wow, it's writing it for me. So const initial state, and this is initial state is gonna have value. So that 1, 2, 3 that is gonna be increasing from 0. So it's gonna be starting from 0. Then from 0 it's gonna increase. So that's the only state I want. So I'll just have that. If I wanted more, I would have added more. But that's the only count that I want to capture for now. Okay. So I have that. So now I'm going to create my reducer, which is my slice. So how do I do that? I'm going to create it by also exporting it. And I'm going to say export const. And I'm going to call it the counter slice. Counter slice. That's what I'm going to call it. So I'm going to now equate it to, okay, it's already writing some for me, create slice. So inside the create slice, I'm going to be having things like number 1, name, which is name of the slice is going to be counter. So you can give this reducer any name you want. Okay, so I'm going to be giving it name of counter. Okay, then I'm also going to be having my initial state. So make sure you name it exactly the way you named it in this variable up here. So I'm going to be having my initial state. So my initial state value is going to be initial state. So instead of saying initial state dash initial state, you know, this is part of JavaScript. Instead of having these two, you can just call it initial state since it's the same thing because of ES6. Okay, then now, so the name of the slice is counter. Then I'm going to write the reducer here. That's the next thing. Okay, so what is going to be the reducer? So the reducer function, what reducer functions am I going to be having? I'm going to be having something like increment, decrement, and any action I want to perform. This is where I do that. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to be having my increment. Okay. So that's what I'm gonna. It's gonna be taking in state. This is a function that's going to be taking in states. So when it takes states, it's going to add 1 to it. So this is how you can add 1. So you simply say state.value, because here you have the state here. The initial state here is 0. So the value here is 0. State.value, you're adding 1 to it. So that's simply what you do. So I'm going to be having another state. So which state do I have now? So let me have the decrement state. So what is the decrement state going to be doing? So it's simply going to be doing opposite of what increment is doing. So it's going to simply state.value. This is the state.value. You're subtracting 1 from it. Okay. So I'm going to also do another final state, which is the reset state. So what do you think my reset will be doing? So what do you think reset will be doing? So reset will just set the value back to 0. Okay. Now I'm gonna do one last action, which I'm gonna call increment by amount. Okay. So this one is so important because here we're gonna learn how to use not just state as the argument, but both state and action, because every reducer takes into argument state and action. So this is a more complete one. So I'm gonna give it state.value is equal to, I'm gonna be adding by the payload. So I'm gonna be giving a payload here and be adding by the payload. So this is very, very important that you do something like this. Okay. So I'm gonna now make sure that I close up. So this is now complete. So I'm gonna save this. This is our complete reducer slice. And everything is working and effective. Everything is working and effective. So I can now go back to my store. You remember that here I have my store here. This is where I created my store. So I'm going to bring in this slide that I just created. But before that, I'm going to import it first. Okay, sometimes even when you just put it, it will be imported by itself. So let me just put it here first and see whether it gets imported by itself. So the name of that slide is counter. You remember it's counter that I named it. So I'm going to press this. So counter is going to have so the name is counter. So I'm going to call it counter reducer. So you can call it anything you want here. So I'm going to call it counter reducer. Okay. Let me see whether it gets imported. Okay. It will not, because it doesn't know what counter reducer is. So let me quickly import it as counter reducer. So import counter. So import counter reducer from features blah blah blah. Okay. So good. So I'm importing counter reducer from features slice. This counter slice. This which is here. Counter slice. Counter slice. Okay. So that is where I'm importing it. Okay. So it's now importing it as counter reducer. This counter slice that is here, this is the counter slice. So it's being imported as what? Counter reducer. That's why when I gave it counter reducer, it's now assigning this as counter. Okay. So this is okay now. So let me make sure that everything is still proper. So make sure you close this here. Okay. So it's perfect. So I can save this out now. So you can see that my store is now seeing my slice. Okay. So my store is now seeing my slice, and that is perfect. So I'm gonna go finish up the work now. So I'm gonna go to these features. I've created the inside features. We have the counter, which is the counter slice. So inside these same features now, I'm gonna, inside this counter folder, apart from the slides, I'm gonna create the component itself. Okay, so let's create the component itself. So I just click here, and click on new file. So what do I call the component itself? I'm gonna call it the counter component. So I'm just gonna call it counter. It's as simple as that, counter. So I'm gonna say counter.js. Okay. So please, I'm gonna join up a meeting now. Then I'll get back. 1 minute. Sorry.